The stars had never looked so small. Captain Mara Voss stood on the observation blister of the UES Endeavour, boots magnet-locked, arms folded so tight the seams of her flight suit creaked. Outside, the Milky Way spilled like careless sugar across black marble. Inside, every breath tasted of copper and ozone. 4 hours earlier, the ship's AI had whispered a single sentence into the general comm loop, words that rewrote every textbook humanity had ever printed. Unidentified bioship decloaking, mass, continental, origin, non-terrestrial, intent, unknown. The thing, no, the vessel, hung starboard side now, a cathedral of meat and iridescent shell wrapped around a neutron-caged heart. It looked like something had skinned a whale, stretched it over a Dyson lattice, and taught it to pulse in Morse code. Every throb printed new constellations on the inside of Mara's eyelids. She refused to blink. "Tell me you're seeing this," she murmured. Lieutenant Okonkwo's voice cracked through the bone conduction bead behind her ear. "Seeing, smelling, tasting. Sensors say it's bleeding oxygen and heavy metals into vacuum. It's breathing hard vacuum cap. That's not a hull breach. That's respiration." Which meant the bioship was wounded. Which meant something out here could hurt it. Mara's pulse kicked once, hard, like a mule in 0G. Humanity had spent 3 centuries swaggering across local space, terraforming, strip mining, seeding von Neumann scouts, convinced the galaxy was an empty orchard waiting for a monkey with a stone axe. They had sang proud anthems about being the first and only sapient flame in the dark. Now, the dark had answered with a body count. "Comms, roll the greeting package," she ordered. "Full spectrum, math, music, pictograms. Keep it polite, keep it humble." Humility was a new uniform for Earth. It itched. The reply arrived 17 seconds later, not as signal, but as weather. Every screen on the Endeavour flushed crimson, then drowned in viscous ultrasound. Crew doubled over, noses bleeding, prosthetic implants rebooting into factory mode. The bioship wasn't talking, it was vomiting information. When the translation matrices finally spat out a coherent fragment, it scrolled across the bridge bulkhead like a funeral banner. "Your parasite noise has been weighed and found wanting. The forge that shaped us remembers the shape of betrayers. Offer vessel or offer blood." Mara's tongue felt thick. "Options," she barked. "Okonkwo, we can't outrun it. If that thing sneezes relativistic plasma, we're a smear." Weapons Officer Havil, "Rails are hot, but targeting it is like aiming at a hurricane. We just piss it off." Chief Xenologist Dr. Lee, speaking for the first time since the encounter began, whispered, "It thinks we're descendants of something that hurt it long ago. We're inheriting a bill we never knew was written." Mara felt the universe tilt. Humanity's crime wasn't hubris, it was amnesia. Somewhere in the fossil light between stars, a war had raged before Earth's first bacteria split. The bioship carried scars etched by hands that looked like hers, were uniforms stitched from the same patriotic threads, and it had come to collect compound interest. She opened a channel, not to the creature outside, but to her own species. "All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations is the wrong order. Today, we listen. If we survive, we remember. If we don't, we leave a warning carved in quarks. Acknowledge?" 100 voices answered in one ragged breath. Acknowledged. The bioship's neutron heart fluttered, and a single slab of its living hull peeled away like a petal. Inside, a hollow the size of Manhattan, lit by bioluminescent veins and lined with sarcophagi, each sarcophagus a transparent cocoon holding a human silhouette. Not Earth humans, pre-Earth. Pale, elongated, eyes black as obsidian, fingers too numerous. They floated in amber fluid, mouths open in eternal song. The translation matrix crackled again. "Return the vessel that carried your shame. Return the seed that fled. Offer the original, or we take the copy."
Mara understood. The bioship wasn't hunting humanity, it was hunting Earth itself. Our planet was a lifeboat launched by the losers of an ancient stellar war. The victors had programmed their living warships to chase the refugees across megaparse, through geological epochs, until the debt was paid in biomass and memory. Earth was not humanity's cradle, it was humanity's witness protection program, and the parole had just expired. Mara felt a strange calm settle. She keyed her private channel to the AI core. Endeavor, compute Delta V to ram that opening, full thrust, no braking. The AI's voice, her own voice, sampled from 1,000 hours of command logs, answered soft as bedtime. Course plotted. Impact in 90 seconds. Crew survival, 0. Bioship catastrophic damage, uncertain. Good enough, she said, and unstrapped. She floated to the blister window, pressed her palm against the glass. The bioship's pedal mow yawned wider, a throat of stars and coffins. Mara to Earth, she whispered, knowing the light lag would never carry it home. Tell them we finally found the monsters. Tell them the monsters were us before we forgot. And tell them... She never finished. The Endeavor lit her drives like a second sun. Inside the bioship, 1,000,000 sleeping ancestors opened their obsidian eyes and sang a note that shattered vacuum. The collision bloomed silent, beautiful, a chrysanthemum of plasma and regret expanding at 500 kilometers per second. On the night side of Earth, 10 billion people looked up and saw a new star wink open. A star that blinked once, twice, then bled across the sky like a wound that would never close. And somewhere in the drift of wreckage, a single data crystal tumbled intact, armor-plated by luck and velocity. It contained the Endeavor's black box, Mara's final log, and the translated fragments of an accusation older than oceans. The galaxy had sent a bill. The first installment had been paid in Captain's blood. But invoices, once issued, accrue interest, and the next collection agent was already stirring beneath the ice of a moon no one had bothered to name.
The shard of smart glass spun through vacuum like a microscopic compass needle, its mirrored faces catching the distant glare of Sol, until a tug drone from the lunar far side array netted it in a carbon fiber web. 38 hours later, it lay under sterile lamps in Copernicus Vault, the most secure data mausoleum the United Nations could weld together. Dr. Kenji Vale, archivist insomniac and last human allowed to smoke inside a pressure dome, turned the shard under tweezers until the quantum seam clicked. A single pulse of violet light leapt across the workbench, Mara's final breath compressed into a femtosecond. The hologram that unfolded was not the heroic bust Earth's propaganda hoped to sculpt. Mara's eyes were hollow, pupils dilated by an adrenaline cocktail injected straight to the heart when the ramming alert sounded. Behind her, the bridge lights strobed crimson, each flash etching new fractures across her faceplate. She spoke fast, voice pitched low so the crew wouldn't overhear panic. Earth, if you're watching this, stop looking for little green men. Start looking for little green memories. The bioship called us a copy. That means somewhere out there is the original genome, the unedited shame we sprouted from. Find it before the next sentinel wakes, or rewrite us so the fingerprint no longer matches. The message ended with a checksum, a strand of base pairs 3.2 billion letters long. Earth's genome compared against the sarcophagus mummies. The diff was 0.0003%, one misplaced SNP for every 1,000 nucleotides. Enough to argue innocence in a court, enough to convict in a crusade. Vale's cigarette trembled. Ash fell onto the optical table like gray snow on a microscope slide. He understood what the military council would do next. Weaponize the diff. Brew a viral spray that mutates every human cell just enough to dodge recognition. Germline edits. Ethnic-specific edits. billion-dollar lottery for the rich to buy immunity while the poor incubate the test batches. He copied the shard, encrypted it with a one-time ad, and walked the clone into the biolab where his own ex-wife, Dr. Io Sutopo, was culturing extremophile lichen for Europa terraforming. She hadn't spoken to him since the divorce papers cited irreconcilable sleep schedules, but she still owed him a favor. A single gene-hacked lichen spore capable of storing 200 petabytes in its introns. They met under the orange safety lamps of the vacuum lock, her visor reflective, his transparent so she could see the bags under her eyes. "You want to hide the genome inside a plant?" she asked after he laid out the plan. "Not hide," he corrected. "Broadcast. We scatter it across every rock we touch. If we go extinct, the galaxy still has our unaltered ghost. If we survive, we carry the evidence that we were manufactured refugees. Either way, the truth stays bigger than any flag." Io stared at him long enough for the air recycler to cycle twice. Then she opened her gloved palm. "Give me the spore. But if this ends in a war crimes tribunal, I'm blaming the insomnia." The splice took 40 minutes. When they finished, the lichen glowed soft jade under UV, a color not found on any earthly forest floor. They nicknamed it Witness.
While lunar security hunted for the missing black box, Witness rode a routine supply tug to Lagrange 4, then transferred to a long hauler outbound for Ceres. At every port, spores clung to hull plates, ventilation ducts, the cuffs of unwashed coveralls. Within 6 months, the green ghost shimmered on half the fleet. Earth Senate declared it a containment leak, issued quarantine scripts, but the more they scrubbed, the brighter the lichen fluoresced, like guilt under bleach. Conspiracy streams exploded. The glow was 5G, was alien mind control, was divine rapture. Kids tattooed trilobite green spirals on their cheeks to mimic the bloom. In the belt, where UN edibles tasted like recycled cardboard, Witness became currency. A pinch of glowing dust bought you a bowl of real onions, a night of uncensored net, a forged ID that said you were born on Mars instead of a debt-indentured mining barge. Everyone carried a fragment of the genome in their pocket, unknowing custodians of the evidence. Then the second sentinel arrived. Not a bioship, something leaner, a blade of obsidian matte, no thermal signature, no mass shadow. It slid into lunar orbit like a thought you swear you never had. Every telescope that looked at it developed dead pixels in the shape of a human eye. Its broadcast was simpler than the bioship's poetry. Genetic recidivism detected. Compliance window 72 hours. No demand, no ransom, just a countdown. The Senate convened, voted, and, under Emergency Clause 7, authorized Project Whitewash, a planet-wide CRISPR aerosol to overwrite the offending SNPs in every human alive. Logistics required 300 orbital tankers, $6 trillion, and the consent of a population still arguing about vaccine passports. Protests lit every continent. Some preached transcendence. Let us be judged as we are. Others preached survival. Edit first, atone later. The lichen kept glowing, impartial on barricades and capitals alike. Vale watched the feed from a safe house on Phobos, sipping synthetic scotch, while Ao calculated diffusion rates. She said, "Even if they spray, the spores are already in the regolith. You can't unpaint a galaxy." He nodded, but the math in his head tasted bitter. The Sentinel didn't need to kill every human. It only needed to kill one timeline of humans, the branch that still carried the original debt. If whitewash succeeded, Earth would survive as a sanitized fork, a palimpsest species living on borrowed nucleotides. But survival wasn't the same as innocence. And somewhere in the dark between Mars and Jupiter, Witness mutated. A transcription error, harmless until it wasn't, inserted a promoter sequence that activated under hard radiation. The lichen began producing a protein that fluoresced not green, but gold. Gold, the exact shade of the Sentinel's hull. The galaxy, it seemed, wanted to talk back.
The golden spores drifted outward on the solar wind, 1 billion microscopic lanterns, each carrying a silent dare. Come find us now. Every telescope that caught their shimmer recorded the same impossible data, spectral lines that matched the Sentinel's hull alloy to 6 decimals. Humanity had not merely hidden its crime, it had mirrored the judge, donned the face of the executioner, and dared it to swing. On the 72nd hour, the obsidian blade eclipsed the moon. Earth's night-side cities darkened in reverence or terror. No one could tell the difference anymore. A single beam, thinner than a hair, lanced down not at a capital or a military base, but at the Sea of Tranquility, where Armstrong's footprint still lay preserved under a thin layer of regolith. The beam did not destroy. It read, scanning every layer of dust, every discarded descent stage, every fleck of urine frozen decades ago. It was paging through the diary of a species, looking for the page where the lie began. When it reached the layer seeded with witness, the beam paused. The golden spores rose against the light, spiraling upward like a helix of fireflies. On every screen across the system, the same image appeared: obsidian meeting gold, darkness kissing memory. The Sentinel's matte surface rippled for the first time, revealing circuitry that looked eerily like human vasculature. It was not a machine, it was a mirror, grown by the same progenitors who built the bioship, forged to reflect only the truth. And the truth was a face, Mara Voss, eyes bloodshot, lips cracked, repeating her final log on an endless loop. But the reflection aged her, skin paling to pre-Earth alabaster, fingers multiplying into elegant 12-digit hands, pupils dilating until they swallowed the whites. The Sentinel was showing not what humanity was, but what it had been before the forgetting. The debt was not genetic, it was mnemonic. They had never fled a war, they had erased it, scrubbed their own past, then launched themselves into the dark like a message in a bottle, hoping the ocean would forgive the author. The Sentinel's hull folded open, not in threat, but in invitation. Inside lay a corridor of light, each photon a stored memory, the original treaty broken, the worlds rendered sterile, the refugee fleet granted clemency on condition of amnesia. Earth had been not a hiding place, but a prison with no walls, except the ones inside skulls. The bioships were not hunters, they were wardens checking parole. And humanity had violated parole the instant it began to dream of empire again. Earth held its breath. Senators clutched unsigned extinction warrants. Children clutched glowing spores to their chests like bedtime pearls. Every heart beat the same question: do we walk into the light and remember, or do we cower in the edited dark and vanish? The answer came from the most unexpected vector: the moon itself. The golden lichen had reached the footprint. In the vacuum it could not grow, yet it sang, vibrating the regolith like a trillion tuning forks. The frequency matched the rhythm of a human heart at birth. Fast, hopeful, unashamed. Across the globe, newborns and incubators twitched in dream sync, their EEGs locking on to the lunar cord. A species that had never agreed on anything suddenly shared a heartbeat. Thale, still on Phobos, felt it through the soles of his boots. He looked at Ao, tears floating perfect spheres in 0G, and knew the choice had already been made by the only jury that mattered, the unwritten future. He opened a channel to every frequency, from pirate radio to quantum entanglement, and spoke the shortest confession in history. We remember. Sentence us, but let us remember. The Sentinel's corridor brightened, became a sunrise that spanned half the sky. One by one, the golden spores rose from Earth, from ships, from the pockets of miners and warlords and school kids, ascending like reverse starfall. Each spore carried a fragment of collective memory, every first kiss, every genocide, every lullaby, every lie, woven into a single genome of light. The obsidian mirror drank it all, not as data, but as witness. When the last spore vanished inside, the hall sealed without a sound. For a moment, the universe held its breath, a tableau of predator and prey fused into a single silhouette. Then the Sentinel folded, not into hyperspace, but into story. It became a constellation no telescope could log, a shape every child would draw instinctively, a human figure reaching backward to clasp the hand of something older, both stepping forward together. The stars rearranged themselves around the new myth, and the night sky was rewritten in real time. Earth did not fall. Instead, gravity lessened by a fraction, as if the planet exhaled centuries of dread. Every edited SNP reverted in living cells, a billion tiny time machines resetting the ledger. People looked at their hands and saw unfamiliar knuckles, ancestral shades, the faint outline of 12 digits shrinking back to 10. Memory poured in, not as trauma, but as context. They remembered the war they had fled, the worlds they had burned, the covenant they had broken, and they wept, not in shame, but in arrival. In the silence that followed, the moon broadcast a single pulse on the frequency of the golden chord, a heartbeat answered by another, then another, until the entire solar system thumped like a living drum. Somewhere beyond Neptune, the bioships turned their flowering prows towards home, parole granted not by authority, but by accountability. The galaxy, it turned out, did not want blood. It wanted truth with teeth. Truth that could bite the next hand that reached for empire. Mara's voice echoed once last, not from a shard, but from the sky itself. We are the price and the payment. Remember, so no star must bleed for our forgetting again. And humanity, raw, unedited, magnificently guilty, looked up at the new constellation, raised 12 phantom fingers to the void, and swore an oath older than language. We will remember. We will testify. We will never again rent the stars to hide our shadow. The drumbeat faded into lullaby. Children born that night carried gold flecks in their irises and ancestral hymns in their dreams. They would grow up to terraform not just planets, but histories, tending memory like gardens, weeding out the lies before they could root. And when, centuries later, the next sentinel arrived, because there is always a next sentinel, they found no quarry, but only neighbors singing in 12-part harmony under a sky that remembered every voice, every crime, every promise kept. The obsidian blade hovered, listened, then dissolved into stardust, its purpose obsolete. The galaxy exhaled. The debt was paid, not in blood across the stars, but in truth across time and the universe. For the first time since the first war, began to forgive.